What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the episode of The Lawyer You Know. And today we are jumping into day one of the Brian Walshe trial. We are going to watch opening statements together from the state and from the defense and hear the wild and, sudden, unexpected theory of the defense that was pretty expected and everybody knew was coming, but we had to hear them say it. And it opens the door to what feels like it has to happen now in this trial. And the state's arguments in opening statement that they made touches on a lot of evidence that a lot of people thought might be out because of those plea deals. And it was part of the strategy from the defense. Well, those arguments are in. And I've got my Christmas tree up behind me. I have no idea what's going on with the lights. I didn't set it. I'm going to be in a much smaller box. Hopefully it's not too distracting for you, but we're here early because I know there's a PAT scan. We'll get as much of the video done before. If you guys got to run, I get it. You can catch up with me later. But let's go ahead and get to it. I'm a man of the people, right? So some people reached out, they're like, Pat's play at 8:15. I'm like, hand up. That's on me. Planned it in the wrong time, but that's kind of when it worked for me today. So that's how we got here. The opening statements from the state start off giving a lot of background on Anna Walshe, who she is, where she comes from. They talk about the fact that she had colleagues, and this all kind of started when her colleagues were like, where is she? They call Brian Walshe. They're trying to figure out where she is. Eventually, she gets reported missing. That's kind of the beginning part of this opening. I also thought it was interesting that the judge said in the beginning that the state used 4 preemptory challenges and the defense used 8, and how that's something that, as far as they couldn't get a jury, or should we change this venue? And the judge said, no, we're going to go ahead and try to pick a jury. Then, that's something that could come into play later. I thought that was pretty interesting as well. And I get it. Everybody's making a comment about the tree. If I wouldn't have, made it a big deal at the beginning, maybe not. But it is what it is. But don't worry, my box is going to get much, much smaller as we get into the state's opening statement. So let's pull it up here and let's get to it.
And then she transitioned to real estate. She got the opportunity to work for Jen Lutlu, who has her own real estate company. She actually wound up running that company for her. That was until February 2022, where she got what Brian Walshe referred to as a dream job, where she got to work for Kitchen Spire. And she would make more money than she had ever made before in her career. She had purchased a townhouse in Washington, D.C., and she was expecting to have her family come with. However, Brian and the children had stayed in Massachusetts. And the reason is that Brian had previously pled guilty to a count of fraud in the Boston Federal District.
So that's first. People were wondering, is that going to come in? The fact that he pled guilty to fraud, okay? And the tile said lies because that is the common theme. By the way, I might just unplug the tree here in a second. Don't worry. That is one of the things the jury hears first, within the first 5 or 10 minutes of this opening statement. The jury knows that Brian Walshe is a fraud. That is a big deal. That can cook a case from the beginning. That's something that they hear, and that's not going to be the first time that they hear he is a liar. And a lot of people, when it comes to fraud, they know what that means, right? And later they're going to hear in the interviews that he, lied about the value of some artwork. But there's just so much. The big theme of today is Brian Walshe is a liar. What does that do to a jury? And that's what you have to think when we're looking at the defense. And I know there's going to be some people that think this defense theory is so stupid, it's crazy. Why would they ever do that? There's no chance of winning. But from my perspective, I want you guys to think, if you're a jury coming into this case knowing nothing about it, and this is how you are introduced to the defendant, Brian Walshe, then I want to know what your feelings are and what you thought. And does he immediately start off behind? Because as jurors, when they come in, it's an even playing field. He's presumed innocent. Everybody's going forward and make the state prove their case. Well, when they can prove he is a flat out liar from the start, How hard is it? How hard is it to overcome that now? And that's what I want to know from you guys in the chat. As we're listening, do you think he's a proven liar? If so, how? And how difficult is that for the defense to overcome? Okay. I am going to run an ad and unplug the Christmas tree here. So here we go. If anybody's looking for Christmas gifts, this is a good one. Something every person needs, but so hard to find, is the right wallet. An overstuffed wallet is a chronic problem. I literally can't stand it. I personally need to be forced to prioritize what's in my wallet. But today's sponsor, Extert, has solved the riddle. They've created a compact, sleek-looking wallet that has this fun gadget here to pop your cards out. And by the way, it's my favorite part. It also doubles as a fidget toy. And it's fully protected from drops. It's built from 100% recycled 6061 aluminum. It holds up to 14 cards, plus has this spot for your cash, and blocks RFID to prevent wireless theft. Plus, it has a lifetime warranty, which you obviously can't beat that. And for those of you who lose your wallet often, they've got you covered with their Apple Finder. That's a perfect add-on. They also sent me their travel pack vacuum kit, which I've never had before and never thought of. And it immediately triples the space in your bag and protects your clothes from spills and odors. It made my travel backpack a long weekend suitcase for my latest trip to Colorado for a board meeting. I didn't have to check a bag or even wheel on a carry-on. Exeter is currently offering a Cyber Week sale of up to 54% off site-wide. Plus, use my code LAW10 at checkout for an extra 10% off. Okay. I figured out how to get the lights to not flash, but not unplug them. Hopefully that pleases everybody. There's like a setting you can push the button. So don't worry, I didn't have to unplug the tree. Okay, so there's so much in these opening statements that I want to get to. So much, legally speaking, both sides have a lot of strategy to how they decided to open this case and to give us an expectation as to what we are going to find.
But he hadn't been sentenced yet. Now, he was accused of owing over $400,000 of restitution. At this point in time, Anna was the breadwinner for the family, and she had moved to D.C. She was still commuting back and forth, but looking to have the family join her in D.C. And Brian too. However, when she bought the townhouse, she did this with the aid of a person by a real estate agent by the name of William Fastow. She was introduced to Mr. Fastow from her former boss, Jim Newton. Mr. Fastow will testify, and he will tell you that they became friends, and that friendship became romantic.
So they jump right into the affair. And usually you don't want to make your victim look bad, right? If you're the state. But here, the state is pitching this as one of the motives. And the state's got multiple motives to pick from in this case. So they're not just going to go from one, I should say the Commonwealth. So they're not just going to go for one. They're going to talk financials. They're going to talk about an affair. They're going to talk about the fraud in the federal case. They're going to throw all the different motives that make Brian Walshe look like a generally bad guy and give him motives as to why he would want to hurt or get rid of Anna Walshe. They've got multiple motives. They're going to go for it. Maria said, love the Christmas tree. Whitney Christmas fun. Thank you, Whitney, for the decorations. Yes, we're always trying to keep everybody on their toes here, right? Keep things light, keep things fun, especially when we're dealing with very difficult cases.
And that carried on into November of 2022, when Anna needed to go visit her mother, who was sick back in Belgrade, Serbia. Anna flew to Dublin Island the weekend of Thanksgiving, and Mr. Fastow joined her for that weekend. She then flew and visited her sick mother in Serbia, and then would return back to the United States. Mr. Fastow, after Dublin, would go back to Washington, D.C. But Anna missed Thanksgiving with Brian and the children. And then on Christmas Eve that same year, Anna went out to dinner with Mr. Fastow. They went out to dinner in Annapolis with another couple. And she stayed the night. And she was supposed to get a flight out on Christmas Day, but she couldn't get a flight. So she had to drive up from Washington, D.C. to Cohasset. And she missed Christmas Eve and most of Christmas Day with Brian. She would fly back to Washington, D.C. And on December 29th, she would go to dinner with one of her friends who will testify before you. And that friend will say that she was uncharacteristically tired and emotional. You'll also hear from a series of witnesses that dealt with Anna Walshe right before New Year's. She returned back to Cohasset on December 30th, and she was going to stay with the family until January 3rd. You'll hear how she went to a bar class, B-A-R-R-E. It's an intensive ballet class. You'll hear from the instructor who will say that she did exceedingly well in it.
Why are they talking about that? Why are they talking about how she did in a bar class? Well, if you remember, the judge kind of forced each side to exchange anything they're going to show in opening statements. So I don't know if they got a tip off as to what the defense was going to argue, but if you remember back when me and my dad did the video after they pled, to those two charges, after the defense pled to those two charges, it limited what their defense could be. It can only be a couple things once you're going to admit that. And we never thought it was going to be a strategy to get rid of that evidence or eliminate the Google searches or getting rid of the body or lying to the police. A lot of people were like, oh, what a strategic mastermind these lawyers are to get rid of all that evidence. It's like, if it was that easy, we'd see this a lot more. They're not just going to get rid of that evidence, especially when there was no additional motion in limine argument, no additional rulings from the judge. KM said, will the jury be told about Walshe pleading out of the other two charges? They won't be told that he pled guilty to them, but they're told something more out of the mouth of the defense attorney. When we get to those openings, just wait till you hear what the defense attorney says. So they're not getting rid of that evidence. But why would it be important for this prosecutor to talk about how well she did in a bar class? Ashley said it's important in Massachusetts to clarify what bar is. It was big when we were in college. I remember all the girls would go to the bar class. But anyways, so why is he highlighting this and saying she did well? Because he wants everybody to know she was, I think he said 39 at the time, and healthy and fit. Even Brian Walshe, they play part of the recording that says he wasn't in good shape, but she was. So it's important to highlight just how healthy she is when we're going to hear what the defense's argument is in this case.
A person who was with her in a nail salon will testify. She got her nails done on New Year's Eve. And Mr. Mutlu will testify. He went over to the Walshe family residence on New Year's Eve for dinner. 3 adults were there. It was Mr. Mutlu, Brian, and Anna. He got there around 8:30. He brought some snacks for the kids. Actually got to play with the oldest child. And he spent the night talking to his friends. He characterized them as jovial. They shared champagne. They weren't drunk. They were enjoying the new year. They actually signed the champagne box. And you'll see that, where they were looking forward to the new year. Brian cooked. Brian was attentive. Brian also said to Mr. Mutlu that night that he had lost his phone, had been misplaced, but he had felt free as a result of it. Mr. Mutlu left that home on New Year's Day at 1:30 a.m. And there was no mention of a work emergency in Washington, D.C. that would require Anna to fly out or leave the family home at 6 or 7 a.m. that day. Now on January 4th, after Hugh Dunleavy had called the Cohasset Police Department dispatched Officer Greg Lawrence to go speak to Mr. Walshe at his home. Officer Lawrence went. He was met outside by Brian Walshe. Brian Walshe informed Officer Lawrence that Anna had left on January 1st, had taken an Uber or Lyft to Logan Airport to fly out to Washington, D.C. for a work emergency. Gave her a phone number for Anna Walshe, described her as 5'2", that she was 39 years old, approximately 115 pounds. He hadn't heard her. Officer Lawrence went back to the Cohasset Police Department, worked with other Cohasset police officers, trying to find any connection to Uber or Lyft or local taxi cabs. Cohasset Police would then begin the process of pinging on his phone. You're going to get to see the records from that, but essentially the process involves the cell phone carrier, in this case Verizon, sending a signal onto the phone to try and locate. And the Verizon records will show that the last time that phone that belonged to Anna Walshe interacted with the network was shortly after 3 a.m. on January 2nd. And when it did so, it was in the area of the Walshe home. That same day, Cohasset Police also tasked Detective Schmidt.
Listen, I can't believe what's going on in the chat right now. I thought you guys had my back. I thought you were my people. Thought this was the chat you know. And I've just got too many people throwing stuff up. I'm not even going to read this comment. I'm glad you're here, kind of, but you started a bit of a train in the chat that I'm not a fan of. Not a fan of. I'm just going to say that, okay? Intuitive Karen said he's boring. So I don't think he gave the most exciting presentation, but I think he laid the groundwork to where the jury is going to think, I don't trust Brian Walshe, okay? And I think the defense helped him a little bit. Now, they had their theory, but I think they did help him a little bit in he is trying to put forth, I don't trust Brian Walshe, and neither should you. He's a bad guy. He did this with kind of the overarching, I don't actually care, guys, for anybody getting mad at people in the chat. I don't actually care. You can like whatever team you want. Hasn't been a great year, okay? It's fresh wounds for me. But I think that he did a good job kind of setting the stage to where I think the jury's probably with him at the beginning of the case. What do you guys think? I feel like most of the, Twitter, most of the world, the comments, the chat is with the Commonwealth after this opening statement and day one of trial. That's a pretty good job by the Commonwealth, right?
Investigating this case.
But we got to wait till we hear the defense, their arguments, and their theory.
He and Officer Lorenz, we go back to the Walshe family residence at 516 Chief Justice Cushing Highway and interview Brian Walshe. And he recorded it. You'll get to hear the recording. And Brian will talk about how Anna was commuting back and forth from Cohasset to Washington for work, how there were some issues with his federal case, and how Mr. Mutlu had come over for dinner that night on New Year's Eve, and how Anna had to leave between 6 and 7 on January 1st. He also, in that interview, described what Anna was wearing when she left the home. Blue-gray hunter boots, a black jacket, and an Hermes watch. So Sergeant Smith will testify before you, and he will tell you that he worked on this missing person investigation and called in additional resources to help. On the 5th, he had his own department do a search of the woods near the family home. On the 6th, he called in a task force made of several different police departments to do further searching of the woods in and around the Walshe family home. Contacted the state police to use their resources. He also got the opportunity to speak to Mr. Walshe on January 5th, January 7th, and January 8th. And when he did those interviews, he was accompanied by detectives from the state police. And those interviews were recorded. You'll get to hear those interviews. And Mr. Walshe, during those interviews, will explain that he and Anna were happily married. He had no knowledge of any extramarital affair. That Anna had her dream job. That it was taking care of the family. And conversely, he didn't take a salary this year out of his company that was a consulting company. He told the police that he owed over $400,000 in restitution on his federal matter. That this case was causing stress on his marriage. That he might have to go to jail. He said that they were.
And again, all those things might not sound like a big deal to us because we knew this coming in. But when you're sitting there on the jury and you're looking over at that guy and you have cops and state attorneys all saying that guy's guilty, he needs to go to jail. It's like, okay, so that's the decision I'm here to make. But he already is guilty of something else and he already might go to jail for something else. How much more likely do you think that means he's going to be guilty here? This is exactly why, and I'm saying it this way on purpose because this is exactly why it is such a big decision for a judge to let things like this come in, because the propensity argument that because you've been a criminal in the past, you're more likely to be a criminal in this case is what most people think, even though that's not a proper argument because it shouldn't have relevance in most scenarios. But when it comes to being a motive or a reason why you would commit this crime, then it is more likely that you'd commit this crime because you committed that other crime that gave you motive. Azam said, I'm unable to join the stream again. Sigh. I'll join the rewatch crew as usual. Love that the Christmas tree is in the back. Missed you guys. We miss you too, Azam. Thanks for checking in, and we'll see you on the rewatch crew. Michelle, sorry, Peter, LOL, go Bucks. Sure. Anybody but that other team. Anybody but that other team.
Very happy, and that the biggest problem was that they were apart. Brian also told the police that Anna's job had caused her to miss Christmas Eve and Christmas Day with the family, and that Anna traveling to visit her sick mom caused her to miss Thanksgiving with the family, and that he did not want to have an argument with Anna about missing another holiday on January 1st. He had a discussion with her about Christmas Day. He was concerned that by him looking around trying to find her, she embarrassed her. So he tells the police, I didn't want to have an argument with her. So I understood she was going to come back, and she left for that emergency order. You'll also have access to financial records that will show that Anna Walshe had approximately $200,000 in accounts at Fidelity, and that there was over $1 million in life insurance in Anna Walshe, and that Brian Walshe was the beneficiary of those policies. And in addition to the Cohasset police, the Massachusetts State Police also worked with them on trying to find out. You're going to hear from two troopers in particular, Trooper Nicholas Marino and Trooper Connor Keith. They are digital forensic specialists. They have special training in examining.
And yes, we've heard a lot of these names before. There's going to be a lot of crossover and similarities. I'm sure you guys can point out any parallels you see. The best part is they don't ever mention Proctor, and Proctor ends up You can hear his name in the background, but they don't ever mention that he's there, which I think is kind of funny.
Computers, tablets, phones. And in this matter, they had the opportunity to examine a MacBook, iPads, and cell phones that were at the Walsh house. And they will explain that on Christmas Day, when Anna had missed Christmas Eve and was after spending the evening with Mr. Fastow and was driving up from Washington, D.C., the cell phone that Brian Walsh was using looked up Mr. Fastow on the internet. And that on December 27th, a MacBook that used the Apple ID for Brian Walsh between 8:30 and 9 o'clock researched best strategies to divorce for a man, best state to divorce for a man.
So the defense has an explanation for a lot of this, and I'll give the defense credit. They knew what they were up against. They realized the Commonwealth has a lot. They have to respond to it. They have to have a defense. You can't change the facts. So what are they going to do to argue with a lot of the evidence that is presented as a roadmap here as to what's coming for the Commonwealth?
Washington, D.C. divorce laws. On December 29th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was researching buildings that Anna Walsh managed for Tishman's fire and emergencies she had handled for them in the past. Trooper Guarino will also explain to you the internet history of that MacBook that had Brian Walsh's Apple ID beginning on January 1st. At 4:54 a.m., the MacBook searched best way to dispose of a body, and then went to similar websites for more than an hour. At 6:24 a.m., same day.
So, how to dispose of a body right after she went missing. What does that make a jury think? For everybody that said, what a masterful plea agreement to get rid of all this evidence, all that evidence is still coming in. These interviews with the cops are still coming in. His lies are still coming in. The disposal and removal of the body, all still coming in. Some of the most damning evidence, these Google searches, still coming in.
Okay, same device. Search how long for someone to missing to inherit? How long missing to be dead? Can you throw away body parts?
How long missing to inherit is really important to motive, going to motive. Is it about money?
Later on that morning, on January 1st at 9:33 a.m., the MacBook went to search how long does DNA last? And then an article. Is it possible to clean DNA off a knife? 30 minutes later, the MacBook researched disposal of a cell phone. At 10:28 a.m., the MacBook researched, I'm the user of my wife's credit card. She is missing. And again, on January 1st, at 11:28 a.m., it searched best way to dispose of body parts after a murder. Trooper Guarino.
It's a pretty bad one. They didn't get rid of that one. The jury's going to hear it in opening. They're going to hear it during the case in chief of the Commonwealth, and they're going to hear it during closing. That's tough. That's really, really tough to overcome.
Explain the numerous websites and searches done by the MacBook in the morning and early afternoon on January 1st, and that these websites were about cleaning blood with ammonia, bleach, and hydrogen peroxide. Websites visited included those as whether it is better to throw away crime scene clothes or wash them. One site was entitled, "You want to get away with murder? Use a special deterrent." This type of activity on the MacBook continued into January.
Seems to fly in the face directly of the defense's theory.
2nd, when it looked up, how long does Lowe's keep security footage? How to saw a body? How to dismember a body? Can you be charged with murder without a body? Can you identify a body with broken teeth? The MacBook also visited websites for apartment complexes in Brockton and Chelsea. One in particular, Chatham West in Brockton. Brian Walsh told investigators that his phone, which was an iPhone 13 mini, had been misplaced and not found until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023. When investigators examined that phone, they learned that it had been connected to a power source. It had been unlocked 4 times by either using the face or the passcode. Investigators will also tell you that the location data from that phone showed that it remained in the Walsh residence until the afternoon of January 2nd, 2023. However, there was another phone in the Walsh residence, an iPhone SE, which belonged to one of the children. When investigators examined the location data from that phone, they found that on January 1st, the phone traveled to a Walgreens in Cohasset, then to a liquor store nearby the defendant's mother's home, an apartment complex in Swampscott, to a CVS in Danvers, to a Lowe's in Danvers, and to a Stop and Shop in Swampscott. You will see the surveillance video from those stores. You'll see the video from Walgreens, where a white man with dark hair using a credit card buys Band-Aids and antibiotic. You'll see on the surveillance video at the CVS in Danvers that a white man with dark hair, now wearing a mask, buys hydrogen peroxide using cash. You'll see the surveillance video from the Stop and Shop in Swampscott, where a white man then goes buys ammonia with cash. And you'll see the surveillance video from the Lowe's in Danvers, where a white man wearing a mask and dark hair buys several items that cost more than $400 using cash, including a Tyvek suit and cutting instruments such as shears, snips, and a hacksaw. Investigators.
All that evidence still coming in. All of it sounds and looks as bad. If you can remember back to the first time you heard about this case and you heard about this evidence, that's how it's coming before this jury right now. And after opening statements, you as a lawyer want to be ahead. Who do you think was ahead after opening statements? Now, we can't make that decision until we also hear the defense.
To explain how the cell phone location data from the iPhone SE shows that it went to a Home Goods in the morning of January 2nd, and that Brian's iPhone 13 mini went to a Home Depot in Rockland in the afternoon of January 2nd. You will see the surveillance videos from those stores. You'll see a white man with dark hair at Home Goods buying scented candles and area lamps. And you'll see a white man with dark hair at the Home Depot buying more cleaning supplies, 20 pounds of baking soda, mop, buckets, and a hatchet. The investigators will also explain to you that Brian Walsh's cell phone on January 3rd was located near apartment complexes in Brockton. You'll see the surveillance video from some of the apartment complexes, including one of Chatham West. You'll see someone go into the dumpster and then leave. The investigators will also tell you that on January 5th, Brian Walsh's cell phone was in the area of dumpsters and a trash compactor by his mother's apartment complex in Swansea, and that this was before he was interviewed by Detective Schmidt later that night. On January 9th,
and that's the wildest thing. Like, we're going to talk about some of the interviews today. We might talk some more about them tomorrow. To think that this guy, as composed as he is in these interviews, as easy as it is for him to lie, knowing his movements and his whereabouts and what he was doing in the days prior and even the hours prior of some of these interviews. Like, if I'm a juror, I'm like, is that dude just an absolute sociopath? That's why the state is setting it up like this. Now, is he a sociopath? Or is he potentially in shock? Doesn't know what to do, in protection mode, more in line with the defense's theory.
the police went to those dumpsters and they took that trash compactor and that dumpster to a facility in Peabody where they searched the contents of both. And they found an Air Mary's watch, blue-gray Hunter boots, a black coat, a COVID vaccination card with Anna Walsh's name, rugs, a Tyvek suit, a hammer, shears, snips, a hatchet, and a hacksaw. The police will tell you that
that's whether or not he pled, they were always going to be able to prove that. That's what I'm saying. I really don't think it was such a great idea to plead. That's my thought on it. I don't think he gained much. I think you could have made these same arguments, but maybe you gain that, I guess, that, you take responsibility for what you did, whatever. They were always going to be able to prove those things. But were they going to be able to prove that he actually killed Anna Walsh? And now with the defense's theory, have they taken on some kind of a burden? And will they be able to hold that burden if they did? Obviously, they have no burden of proof. It's not what I mean. But realistically, in a jury's mind, did you produce a situation where now you do have to prove something?
these items were packaged and brought back to a laboratory and they were brought there for examination. And how some of these items were examined for DNA. And the DNA was compared to samples they had from Anna and Brian. Scientists from the state DNA lab will identify DNA of Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe on the Tyvek suit. They will explain that Anna Walsh's DNA was found from items in the dumpster, including drugs, the hatchet, and the hacksaw. Jen Mutlu said goodbye to Anna Walshe about 1 o'clock, 1:30 a.m. on New Year's Day. When he left, she was home, she was alive, she was with her husband. No one has seen her since her husband said she left on January 1st. She has not access to finances, her email, her phone has made no calls, and no one has found her body. During this case,
So then he says, we're going to present you with the evidence during this case, and we're going to ask that you find her guilty. Okay. And that's basically how he ends his opening statement. And from my perspective, I think it was a strong enough opening statement. But you have to realize this is a dream case. They have so much evidence, so much bad evidence, technical evidence, things a jury can understand, like searches and security camera and admissions and recorded interviews where he says, I want to help. I want to be cooperative. This is all good. I'll do anything. Here's my phone. Take my phone. They have all of that. And then later admissions that it's all lies. Do you know how hard it is to get a jury to believe that your client is lying about everything except for the ultimate question before them? Sometimes you have to admit it. Murdaugh had to admit it too. And you saw how it worked out for him. Very rarely does it work out to admit that your client is a liar in really big and important things, and then to be able to overcome that. But one way you can overcome that is if you have a theory that is provable and you prove that theory. Okay? So let's remember that. If they say this is what happened and they can prove it, well, the fact that he lied about some other stuff, they may actually be able to overcome it. What is their theory and will they be able to prove it? Tom said, hello, Peter. I love the Christmas tree behind you. Clearly Whitney. Yes, it was clearly Whitney. And so thrilled you keep on being you and giving solid commentary on the law. Thank you, sir. And go Hawkeyes. LOL. Yeah, go ahead. Go Hawkeyes. Go to town on them. And I'll always be me. That's what the channel's about, giving these legal takes. Willow. Peter, I recently went to court to obtain a restraining order as a precaution. I found I was pretty comfortable with the legal process, and that is because of what I've learned following the lawyer you know. Thank you. So, Willow, there are so many awesome benefits to doing this, so many great things that come from it, and this is one of them. Thank you so much for sharing that with me. I don't want people to be afraid of the legal process, the judicial process. It affects so many people's lives. There's a lot of scenarios where you don't get a lawyer or can't afford a lawyer or might not even need a lawyer, and if you can do it yourself and not be scared, that's half the battle. So I'm glad you did. I hope it went well, and I'm glad you were confident and comfortable enough to handle something that you felt was necessary. Be still my heart. Peter saying, go Hawkeyes. Go Hawkeyes. You can clip that. You have my permission. All right. Now, what is this wild defense theory, and is it something they'll be able to prove? So answer me some questions in the chat as we're listening. Do you think the defense has taken on a burden with this theory? Do you think it's a decent theory with the facts that we know from the opening state of the prosecution? And do you think they will be able to uphold what they say here in this opening statement? And then lastly, is it at all remotely possible to put this forward to the jury without Brian Walshe testifying?
Brian Walshe lied to the police. Lied to him on January 4th, lied to him on January 5th, lied to him on January 7th.
First words out of this defense attorney's mouth is Brian Walshe lied to police. He lied to him on January 4th, January 5th, and January 7th. That's not running from your problems. That's making your problems a strength sometimes, right? He's taking bad evidence and using it for good. We do it all the time in trials when we're able to. Say, they think that's proof of their case? No. His lies are actually proof of our theory. He had to lie because what we're about to tell you is what actually happened.
Brian Walsh went to Lowe's and bought tools. Brian Walsh went to Home Depot and bought tools. Brian Walsh.
Tools, some could call them tools, right? It's like, so he says, yep, he went to Lowe's. That is him on the video. There's no aha moment. Because again, one thing you can do is if the state does have to prove those things, the state's building credibility. And the jury's like, okay, the state's got the goods. The state's got the goods. Look at all this evidence. They have a video. That's definitely Brian Walsh. If the defense is trying to say it's not Brian Walsh, we don't believe the defense. And if we don't believe the defense there, we're not going to believe them on anything. So they're trying to build some credibility with the jury and take some credibility from the state. But it is a decision to say and admit your client's lying.
Walsh, beginning about 4:54 a.m., began a frantic and tragic search that you will hear about. You'll hear the evidence. You will hear evidence that those searches evolved from how best to dispose of a body to even darker subject matter. As he wrestled with the fact that Anna Walsh was dead.
The searches will get even darker. So you're putting a little intrigue in the jury's mind. I like this guy's delivery better than the prosecutor myself. I like the prosecutor's facts better. I'd rather prosecute this case than defend it. But I like his presentation. He's very confident. He's controlling the courtroom. He's like, listen to me. I'm telling you the truth. He's got to back it up with the evidence that's presented across, etc.
That evidence that you will hear will be hard to understand, but it is true.
Yeah, I never like that. I never like saying it's going to be hard to understand. You don't want to make it seem like you're not going to believe this, members of the jury, but this is what actually happened. Sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's true. But I don't ever like being like, this is unimaginable, but I want you to believe. This is unbelievable, but I want you to believe it. I don't necessarily love that.
On January 1st of 2023, Jim Mutlow left the family home of Brian and Anna Walsh sometime between 1 and 1:30 in the morning. Anna and Brian Walsh continued to celebrate New Year's. They went upstairs to bed. About an hour later, you'll hear evidence that Mr. Walsh got up, went back down the stairs to clean the kitchen. You'll see evidence that he looked at his email. You'll hear evidence that he then returned to the bedroom, intending nothing more than to crawl into bed with Anna Walsh, the woman he loved. When he entered the bedroom and began to get into the bed, he sensed something was wrong. You will hear evidence that it made no sense to him. But he nudged Anna, his wife. She didn't respond. He nudged her again, a little harder. She didn't respond. He nudged her.
And again, he's like, this might be hard for you to believe, but for no reason at all, he decided to nudge his wife in bed. So these are facts that the defense believes in good faith will come out in this trial. How in the world would these facts come out in trial unless Brian Walsh testifies? Now, the defense has more leeway than the prosecution. I've had a case where a prosecutor basically told me they weren't going to call a witness and then in opening said what that witness would testify to. And I was like, objection. And it was sustained, and you can't do that if you really don't know or don't think you might call that witness. Defense sometimes has some more leeway with, will the defendant testify or not? Something changed, judge, now he's not going to testify. So he's not 100% going to testify, but I feel like it's 99%. Because how are you going to talk about, oh, I nudged my wife for no reason, you know, whatever, and she fell out of the bed.
Now, in a frantic and panic reaction to where she actually rolled off the bed. You'll hear evidence that now he is panicking and he doesn't understand what has happened and what is happening. It didn't make any sense to him. It didn't make sense that somebody that he had just been with and enjoyed New Year's Eve into New Year's Day would suddenly be dead. Not him. You will hear evidence in this case of sudden, unexplained death. You will hear evidence that it is real. You will hear evidence that it happens in young people and old. You will hear evidence it happens in male and female. You will hear evidence it happens during the day and during the night, that it happens.
Okay, sure, it does happen. Mary said, I don't know, man, adult sudden deaths have been rising. We don't know. Okay, sure, it does happen. It can happen. I don't think anybody is saying no shot in no world can this happen. Some of the, just some of the problems that come to my mind are what would have been nice is if we could have done an autopsy. Was there a brain aneurysm? Like what happened to cause this sudden death? What made you do what you have admittedly done to her body? And I think that's a fair question for the jury to ask. But the no body, no crime thing makes life a lot harder to prove what did happen to that body. And is the jury going to sit back there and be like, are we going to reward him for what he did to her body? And say that that's reasonable doubt because the body doesn't exist when he admittedly got rid of it? Because he basically admitted it in his opening statement. Yes, he lied. Yes, he went to those stores. Yes, he got tools because he was in shock and dealing with something unexpected and sudden and trying to figure out what the right thing to do was.
Trained experts. You will hear evidence that it can be the result of both mechanical and or electrical problems within the body. You will hear evidence that it might be cardiovascular, pulmonary.
It might be this, it might be that, it might be this, it might be that. Well, we could have done an autopsy to prove exactly what happened.
Neurological or other reasons. You will hear evidence that it occurs in people who have never manifested a symptom that something might be wrong. And in fact, you will hear evidence that sometimes the first manifestation that something is or was wrong with someone is the sudden, unexplained.
Okay, that's true. People also fall out of planes. It's like, I get it. Stuff has happened before. Yeah, Full Metal Agathor, he nudged the whole body off the bed. Yeah, I didn't even think about that when I was listening the first time because there's just so many other things going through my head. But even that, dead weight by definition, you're not nudging a 115-pound dumbbell out of the bed, right? That's a lot.
That's the evidence you will hear. Sudden unexplained death is known within the medical community and the forensic community. But it is to this day not well understood, and that is the evidence you will hear. And it is not well known to non-medical professionals. And you will hear evidence. Brian Walshe never imagined someone suddenly died. 1 hour he's with her, he cleans the kitchen, he comes back up, and she is dead. You will hear evidence in this case that Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe loved each other. Yes, there was stress in the marriage. Stress born out of a simple problem that took its toll. And that's the pending federal case that had begun in 2018 and was still going forward. And what happened was,
take a negative, something that's bad about your case, try to turn it into a positive, try to turn it into something that you can use. That was the only problem between them. None of this financial stuff. He didn't know about any affairs, nothing like that. Gina. That's my sister's name. This is a problem. Ricky, this is a problem. Somebody explain this to me. How was all of this found in the dumpster when he got rid of the body if she really just fell out of the bed? So they can deal with some of the facts, but when you've got these police interviews and you've got what has been found after the fact, when you start piecing this together and you've already admitted that he's lied, and you start looking at his theory and you're like, am I going to believe his theory? How does this make sense? If he did this to her body after she fell out of bed because he freaked out because it was a sudden unexplained death, why did she have her clothes on? Why did she have her watch on, her bag with her, her boots with her? And why is that the outfit that he described in the police interviews?
Over time, Anna Walshe got a job in D.C. with the support of Brian Walshe. It was a huge stepping stone in her career. It paid twice the salary. And they talked about it. You will hear evidence that they had to make a decision. Brian could not leave Cohasset because of the pending federal case. So who would take care of the children? Well, Anna worked in D.C. Brian did. And he did. There was stress in commuting back and forth between D.C. and Cohasset. Brian Walshe experienced that stress too. And Anna Walshe and they talked about it on Christmas Day of 2022. And that's what the evidence will be. Yes, there was an affair. You will hear evidence of an affair. An affair does not make someone a bad person, does not make someone a bad mother. Make no mistake about that. But yes, there was an affair, not between Brian Walshe and Anna, but between Anna Walshe and William Fassler. The evidence in this case will be that Anna Walshe did everything she could to hide that affair. That she did not tell her closest friends, her confidants, some of whom lived in D.C., the same person, Alyssa Kirby, that she spent December 29th with, drinking and talking about her life. She hid the affair. William Fassler will tell you that he was unaware of any plans of Anna ever telling Brian about the affair. William Fassler will testify that,
And this is actually important, that he didn't know about the affair. Nobody can ever say he knew about the affair. There's no text like, I told Brian about the affair, because then it's not a motive. So that is a good argument. I think that's a good argument. Michelle said, panicking is more of a monetary reaction rather than a calculated series of Googling, shopping, and chopping up and putting it in a dumpster. Yeah. I think most, like when you hear frantic 911 calls, most people are in shock. Most people are freaking out. Most people don't know what to do. Most people don't like pull out an iPad and a Apple MacBook and a phone and do all these searches and go from town to town and store to store buying different tools. Like, it's very unusual. I think it's tough. I think it's really tough. And Matt makes a great point. But they don't need to prove it. Yeah, and that's exactly what I said. They're taking on a burden. Of course, the defense never has a burden. But when you put certain defenses forward, you don't have a legal burden. But what legally is required and what a jury's brain requires, what's more important? A jury's brain, if you ask me, and probably most trial lawyers. I would rather convince that juror's brain than make sure everything fits perfectly into the legal. Obviously, I'm not going to do anything illegal, but I'm saying I'd rather win in the jury's brain's definition than the legal definition of reasonable doubt, burden of proof, burden shifting, whose burden is it, who proved what, right? I want the jury to vote for me. However, I have to do that, whether it's take on a burden and prove something or poke enough holes to create reasonable doubt when it's in a case like this. And from my perspective, with this theory, they're going to need to prove this was an unintended, unexplained death. They're going to need to prove it. And there's only one way to prove it, in my opinion, because there's no body, and that's Brian Walshe on the stand. They'll prove with an expert that it's possible. And I think they'll be able to do that. I absolutely think they'll be able to prove it is possible.
they behaved differently in public in D.C. to make sure there was no appearance of the affair. William Fassler will testify that Anna Walshe told him she would be devastated if Brian ever learned about the affair. Brian Walshe didn't know about the affair. He did know. Anna Walshe had a crush on William Fassler because she told him. And he did not react in a jealous way. And you will hear evidence that over the close to decade that these two people were in love. And all you have to do is look at the evidence and the photograph you'll see of Anna Walshe. And the evidence will establish she is a beautiful woman. And it was not unusual for her to comment to Brian, I had some man look at me today. I think he liked her. That didn't upset Brian, not over a period of 10 years. And when she told him that she had a crush on William Fassler, the man who had sold them the $1.3 million townhouse in D.C., it didn't upset Brian. He trusted her. In fact, you will hear evidence from Alyssa Kirby that Anna Walshe told her, I wish you would be jealous.
Proving he's not jealous, proving that's not a motive. There are some good things to pick apart here, right? Where if Brian Walshe would have never spoken to police and hired a lawyer, I think this case would be much more difficult to prove, even with the Google searches, right? I still think it's more difficult to prove. But it's not the case we have here. Samantha said, why is the defense attorney verbally assaulting me? Improve the argument and not the volume of your voice. So it is important to affect cadence and go higher and lower, faster and slower to bring the jury in, get them to pay attention, bring importance to some of the things you say, and really talk in a softer voice to bring them in and make sure they're listening when you say something that's really, really important. And sometimes people do that better than others. Some jurors like it, some jurors don't. So, you guys let me know whether you like it or not. Kino, I know nothing about this case, and I was making dinner during the prosecution. The defense's opening is helping the prosecution. Defense would have a long road to move me to not guilty. And I appreciate this honest opinion. And this is after opening statements. It's not great for the defense. It's not great for the defense if that's how people are feeling about this case. Chris is echoing a lot of sentiments of the chat because I've seen this come up a lot. Peter, a few minutes late, a dead spouse found in bed. I've heard this before. Corey Richens, Chad Daybell, etc. Not buying it. Yeah, it's just not great. It's not great.
You will hear evidence that there was no financial issues or problems. Anna Walshe just got that job in the early part of 2022 that paid close to $300,000 a year. Gifted them money and actually
Talks about how, the parents all gave him money. There was no money issues, no financial issues.
notwithstanding the fact that Anna Walshe was having an affair, she described their relationship as open and honest. He believed their marriage was open and honest because he loved her. You will hear how she described Brian as her best friend to her friend Alyssa Kirby. You will also see evidence of text messages that you may use to determine for yourself if there was love between these two individuals. The importance about those text messages that you'll see is simply that they're dated. The ones you'll see are dated beginning December 25th of 2022, 7 days before New Year's Day. 12:25, Anna Walshe and Brian Walshe are texting each other, and she is sending him 7 properties, listings, primarily out of Zillow, 7 listings of properties in the greater DC area, Bethesda, Annapolis. They're searching for future investment properties. You'll see that, and you'll hear.
I mean, planning for the future as a theme and like future investment properties and stuff was going to happen. It's like, I mean, that means there wasn't like an agreement between two people, right? It's not like you're going to tell your wife, no need to plan for tomorrow, hun. You're not going to be here. I don't think that's usually how it goes.
Evidence that then she comes up to celebrate Christmas with Brian and their 3 beautiful boys. You'll see on 12/27, now that she's back in DC, these text messages between them. And they're talking about one of their properties. And they're talking about the fact that it, in fact, sold. So now they need to figure out what to do with the proceeds. You'll see on 12/28, text exchange between Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe. Now, she's back in DC. She's not feeling well. She's telling Brian, I don't feel well. So I'm going to stay at home and work at home today in DC. And they joke. And on the text, Brian says something like, well, I guess I'll have to get you a plunger. Anna responds, I'll tell you what. I'll buy the plunger. You buy me that Porsche. Why? Because Anna Walshe wanted a Porsche. And what you see on that text exchange, right after she says that, is you'll see postings that he sent to her of the Porsches he'd been shopping for the women he loved. And you'll see in his map that he was shopping for Porsches because she had asked for them. On 12/29, you'll see a text exchange between them where they're talking about a 3-story brownstone that she had found that maybe they'll buy for investment. And you'll see the text references to how much it cost, the square footage is up and below. You'll see text exchange between them where they're talking about possible renovations in the future. They are talking about the future. And this is on 12/29. And then on 12/30, simple texts between them about her catching her flight from DC to get to Cohasset for New Year's. She texts him out later, and what you see in those text messages are she begins to send Brian pictures of her playing with the boys now that she's reunited with her 3 beautiful boys again. And then you see 7 pictures sent by Brian Walshe back to Anna, taken of her playing with the boys. And how do they sign off these texts? You'll see. Brian says, love you. And Anna Walshe says, love you too. We've come full circle in this opening, and now we're back to New Year's Eve. Jim Mutlow, the family friend, is invited by Anna to come to the house to celebrate New Year's Eve. You'll hear evidence that he was thrilled. He was thrilled to be with 2 people he'd known for years, but he hadn't seen in some time. He knew their kids. 3 beautiful boys. He'll describe how when he drove up in the driveway, Anna Walshe ran down the driveway in her heels, no coat, on a cold winter day to hug him. And then what happened? They all went into the house. And what was occurring in the house? Brian was cooking New Year's. He was feeding them as they all talked for 4 to 5 hours. And what were they talking about? They were talking about the future. They were talking about investments. Anna Walshe told a story about how Brian had found a ring for her and the whole adventure of finding the ring and buying the ring. She talked about it in glowing terms when she talked about how Brian did that. Mr. Mutlow will describe that for the 4 or 5 hours that he was there, he saw no problem. That the Brian was happy, and Anna was happy. He described the atmosphere as jovial, festive. He described it as loving. As adults do for New Year's Eve, they celebrated with wine and champagne. You will have that box, or at least photographs of that champagne box, where they signed it. And what Anna signed on that box. She wrote, "Let's make 2023 the best one yet." She went on.
I think we're all in agreement that Anna Walshe was looking towards the future and thinking she was going to continue to live her life.
To say courage, love, perseverance, compassion, joy, and signed it, love. Nothing was more important to both Anna and Brian but those 3 beautiful boys. They had talked about the problem of the federal case. It was stressful. When you heard in the Commonwealth's open the reference to a divorce search, please understand that the other evidence will be that that singular search occurred between conversations between Anna and Brian about the sale of their property. You'll see that that search occurred about 8:30 on 12/27. And why is that important? The evidence will show that the only time Anna Walshe talked about divorce with William Fastow, she talked about it in terms of Brian and I attempting to preserve the family assets.
I think that's a good argument too, assuming he can back that up. That they weren't talking divorce because they hated each other. They weren't talking divorce because of the affair. They weren't talking divorce because, she was mad because he was going to go to prison. They were only talking divorce to try and protect the financial assets. I'm trying to find the good stuff, right? I'm trying to find some of the stuff you can pick out from defense attorneys saying like, no. The finances weren't a reason weren't a motive because they were fine financially. The affair was not a motive because he didn't know about it. And the federal case was not a motive. They were going to get divorced to actually stay together and protect as much as they could when he went to prison. So if this was just a whodunit case, or is she even passed and whodunit, he doesn't have a motive. So it can't be him. Plausible, but we know that it was a sudden, unintended, unexpected death, that he made some wild decisions afterwards, as proven by his Google searches. And that's the mountain they have to overcome. Very difficult. Very difficult.
Why is that important? Because yes, there was $400,000 of restitution that was going to come due. And yes, Ryan may have had to go to prison for some time. And what did that mean? It meant that there was going to have to be arrangements, not just to pay the money, which wasn't going to be a problem, but the boys had to move up to DC because Brian could no longer take care of them. And there would be all that added expense. And they went so far as to talk to Robin Howe, their nanny, their babysitter, and asked her if she would consider moving up. So there were expenses. So when you talk about preserving the family assets, you have to decide, how is it that I make sure, how is it, as Brian Walshe will tell you, how is it that I make sure that my wife and my 3 sons are financially secure if I have to go to prison for a day, for a week, for a month, or for years? That's what they were talking about. And in all of the other digital data that the Commonwealth has been pouring over for 2 years, you will not hear evidence of any other conversation about divorce. And you won't hear it from William Fastow. In fact, William Fastow will tell you he had resigned himself to think Anna Walshe was never going to be Brian's father of her children. Jim Mutlow left around 1:30. Brian Walshe and Anna Walshe went upstairs. He went back down to the kitchen about an hour later to clean it up. And then the impossible, the unimaginable happened. It didn't make sense to Brian Walshe. It was confusing. He never thought anybody would believe that Anna Walshe was alive one minute and dead the next.
But you know how you prove that, Brian Walshe? Autopsy. Because if she had a brain aneurysm or a stroke or a heart attack or whatever, everybody would believe you. Everybody. If she had no signs of a struggle, no signs of asphyxiation or blunt force trauma, I think a lot of people might believe you. If I'm on the jury, I'm at least having that conversation. If this is the theory you're putting before me, explain to me why these decisions. And again, if it's just going to be shock and he did the unimaginable and unbelievable because he didn't know what to do, okay. Kino said, does this seem like a good faith argument to you? I don't know what his discussions are with Brian Walshe. And if he believes Brian Walshe and what Brian Walshe is telling him, we don't know those answers. So if he does believe Brian Walshe and Brian Walshe has explained it to him in a way that he thinks this is a good faith argument, then yes, it very well could be. Abby, listening to his interviews today, all I could hear was Ray Romano. He sounds just like him. It's going to be a long trial. That's funny. That's really funny. Jennifer said, BW has to know he's cooked. I think his lawyers have probably told him this is a long shot. This is a long shot. This is our best chance if we plead to these, whatever. If that's kind of the advice they're giving him, I'm sure they've told him it's a long shot.
All he could think about were those three boys. What would happen to their three boys now that Anna is no longer here? What will happen if they think he did something bad to Anna? Where will those three boys go? And so, he told the story. He told lies. He tried to hide so he could hang on to those boys. Brian Walshe never killed him. Brian Walshe never thought about killing him. Never. Brian Walshe is not guilty.
All right. So he says Brian Walshe is not guilty. We will see if a jury agrees. So let's talk a little bit. We're at the hour mark, by the way. We're going to do a little bit more, probably 10 or 15 minutes more. Make sure you guys hit that like button if you haven't already. We're going to talk some about this first witness and these recordings. Okay. So these recordings are very clearly made voluntarily by Brian Walshe, who thinks that he can talk his way out of this, thinks he can lie this way out of this. I can't tell you how many clients we've had or people we've talked to that have tried to do things like this. And I have never seen it work. Even for innocent people, I have never seen them sit down alone with cops in a strange situation, right? Where somebody's gone or disappeared or whatever. Cops have kind of have their theory and think what happened, and then they're able to convince them otherwise. But this was Schmidt, who was a detective at Cohasset, lead investigator. He talks about going to interview Brian Walshe. He went through the house. They showed pictures of the house, what it looked like, how the kids were in the room for the interview. And again, the defendant's own words start to sink him. It is lie after lie after lie, which everybody knows is true. There's no benefit of the doubt. There's no presumption of innocence when it comes to these lies. He has pled guilty. His own lawyer told the jury he lied to the cops. On January 4th, January 5th, and January 7th. Guess what interviews they're playing? January 4th, January 5th, January 7th. So the jury is sitting there knowing these are lies. And yet, he seems very calm. He doesn't seem confused. He's very nice to his boys. Very normal daddy type stuff. And all the while, even if he didn't end Anna Walshe's life, he chopped her up and spread her around the area. He's admitting to that. The judge is not, the defense is not going to argue that did not happen. So it's a little creepy to listen to these interviews, knowing what he has done, even just the part he admitted. Very, very creepy to listen to these interviews, in my opinion. And a lot of what the defense said, they're repeating what he's saying in this interview. So it's like, I guess he's only lying about some stuff and not others, which, is part of it. Pictures of the kids, marriage seemed great, looking forward to the future, 2023 best year ever. It was interesting that he had screenshots and information of all of her flights, maybe not all of them, but a lot of her flights, just not the one she was supposed to take emergency that morning. And we know he's lying. So it's like, okay, he talks so much in these interviews. He gives unnecessary detail in these interviews. So it's like, this is a professional liar, is what it felt like to me listening to it. People are asking if this is a wolf hat. Yes, it is. This is my wolf hat. One of the lawyer, wolf hats. But it's forward, it's a little shiny for me, so. Okay. So let's listen to him explain this emergency flight. Knowing it's not true, jury knows it's not true. Well, it's kind of hard to tell what the jury knows is not true and what might be true, but let's listen to a little explanation here.
Yeah. A lot of people call him Jim. He's been on the phone with me 5 times today as well. So he came over, and then we had
dinner here.
Yeah, we had dinner here. Yeah, we had dinner here. We celebrated the New Year, and then signed the bottle. She signed 23 things, the best year ever. And then I'm working on it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. There you go. Okay. Okay. See, that's how it happens. At that time, I didn't have access to my phone. So, sorry, he does that a lot. I apologize. He's
It's at the phone, right?
yeah. So William, excited one, took it up. I didn't know it was there, but I knew it was going to turn up. We have a lot of worry that it's going to be thrown out into that. So he had thrown out my wife's phone down there a while ago. That's the age of the kids, but they have a tendency. With Jem that she was worried about work and things like that.
Okay.
And I was like, all right. She was scheduled to leave Tuesday morning early. And then she said that there was an emergency at work, one of the buildings, and that she had to leave early in the morning. Sunday morning. And I was like, okay, normally I would have been like, that's ridiculous, but she worked up until 7 p.m. on December 24th in another building in DC. So I thought, all right, this is, we're going to be together soon enough as a family. It's fine. We made this decision together. So,
Do you know what kind of issue arose?
she didn't explain it to me. But there was one of the buildings had a bunch of leaks. Another building, the FBI raided at one point. Another building, there was disgruntled.
It's just like making this stuff up. Like, it's so many details about this emergency that doesn't actually exist. Bodie said, LOL, now I found my husband's Xmas gift. So Bodie, before you buy it, hopefully you haven't bought it yet. Make sure if you didn't use the Black Friday code, sign up for the newsletter, because we just sent it out and there's a code that's extending through, I think it's the next week. So make sure you still get the 20% off and don't buy it full price, because we still have that discount code. So make sure you're signed up for it. And if you're not, let us know and we'll send you the newsletter so you can make sure. Anybody, I see a couple other people saying they want to get wolf hats. Get the wolf hats, but make sure you get the discount. Make sure you're not paying full price right now. So yeah, just so many details that you don't need from Brian Walshe.
Tenant, so she was dealing with all of that. She's the regional manager there. So I didn't know because I didn't want. I was like, all right, whatever has to be done. Then she said, hey, I'm going to time off for Martin Luther King Day. I can be up for 4 maybe 5 days. And I was like, well, that's great. That's great news. And then she only brings her.
So then he talks a little bit about how, she wasn't feeling well. She didn't sleep a lot. And from my perspective, maybe the defense is going to try to use some of those breadcrumbs, because usually what lawyers do, okay, when you have this theory and your client tells you this is what happened, how can we prove what happened? Then they go back and look at the evidence sometimes another time and say, what can help us prove this theory? So some things that he said during these interviews that may not have seemed important the first time the lawyers listened to them, we go back and listen again and we're like, oh, maybe it wasn't so unexpected or sudden. Maybe she wasn't feeling well. Maybe this was evidence of that. Maybe it was lack of sleep. Maybe it was this. Maybe it was that. What can we go back and look at with a different angle and a different view of the same evidence? And that can actually be the same thing with the fraud case. Same thing with the Google searches. Let's go look at it with a different eye, a different lens, a different filter, and maybe this evidence becomes good evidence for us. And that's where I can see it going with some of these she wasn't feeling well type of arguments. We're going to jump ahead a little bit, and I don't think we need to play that actually. Just about the financials, the legal trouble. She was making 3 times what she was making before. They keep trying to prove they loved each other. All right, let's hear a little bit of, him saying the famous last words like, anything I can do to try to help you find my wife.
Because of my actions.
So we're not gonna catch that.
No, it's, but I just, I know.
I
I want to
get a whole picture.
I don't want to hide anything from you because if that could lead to finding my wife sooner, that's the most important thing.
Right, yeah, so.
But it's, I do want to acknowledge it's extremely,
stress or anything like that.
but it's extremely embarrassing for me to talk about. But I'm
It's extremely embarrassing what you're going to find, but I want to do something, anything that's going to help find my wife. That's what he continues to say, which I understand. But it's like, where your wife is, dude. Like, where she is, flat out. And what you did to, like, I couldn't imagine doing that to anybody. Okay. I couldn't imagine doing that to like a frog I'm dissecting in school, like chopping up its body parts. I couldn't, like, what it would take for somebody to do that to the love of their life and mother of their children. Like, think about what you're admitting to. And I realize there's a lot of evidence, but so Kathleen, they're going to check your spam in case it went to spam. Because yes, a lot of people are getting it and responding to us. John said it might be going to some people's spam folders. And if not, message us on Instagram or Twitter, and we'll try to work with you to make sure you're getting it. Yes, Northwest, thank you. And Matthew, thank you.
under these circumstances, it's worth it.
We're not here to judge anyone.
Thank you for that. Thank you. Is there any, but please, if you have any other questions, please ask me. This is, don't hold back.
She obviously has a passport, right?
Yes, yes.
Is her passport still here?
Don't hold back. Ask me any questions you need to. Please don't hold back. Okay, they go through multiple interviews. Like I said, they talk about the pictures of the house. He brings in Yuri Buchanan, the Chico, Proctor, but he doesn't say Proctor, in to help him. They search the pool. They search the rear of the house. They don't find anything. He describes, Louis Vuitton bag and Prada bags and Hermes bracelets and whatever, all this stuff, like just whatever, for whatever reason. Eventually, it starts to feel like the cop doesn't really believe Brian Walshe. And they come back time and time again. And just a little hint to all of you guys out there. When they do this, it's probably because they don't believe you, and they're probably thinking about you. The amount he talks about his mom in interviews is giving me Adelson vibes. Well, his mom is like very involved, and we're going to hear more about her potentially hiring investigators, giving them money, helping with things. Like, to me, we'll see. John said, off topic, love football and how the chat is giving sports updates. Freaking awesome. I agree. We're almost done here. So everybody, including myself, is going to go watch the Pats game. I need Travion Henderson to have a big game. I need Jackson Dart to not have a big game. Let's go. Need it. Want it. Believe it. Go Pats.
I think I definitely for the first few days in Belgrade because the phone didn't have international. So I was upset about that. So that was the only other con this year that didn't have contact with her daily.
So you normally have daily contact with them?
Yeah, more than once.
What's the longest you go no contact?
The 3 days in Belgrade, and there was the last week of December, there's some points in December where there was like 24-hour gaps, which was really not normal. And then when she was supposed to be there, she wasn't. And I was like, the person reporting missing, where are you? But like 24 hours, 36 hours would be a lot of time. But I was making a big deal out of it over the last couple of months, and everyone told me to relax about it. And then I did. So I feel pretty good.
When you guys did communicate, what was the conversation like?
Well,
Just any time, like during the last couple months when she's been traveling.
oh yeah.
to work.
I mean, well, yeah, it's been like, she always says, hey, hello, and this is what I'm doing today. The boys are up. Sometimes I'll just send photos of kids. She would send me photos of what she's doing. We have a recap. And I know I'm tired that kids are running crazy today. There's no food because I do all the cooking normally. So I'm going to get something to eat. And December, we go to bed. Kids sometimes I go to bed like, if you guys not come, I was going to go to bed. I didn't sleep well last night, so I was going to try to get some sleep tonight. So it's not uncommon for us to go to bed early.
Is there any mental health issues at all with Anna that she had?
And now they're starting to ask about mental health issues, physical confrontations, etc.
anything, any indicators to do that something is amiss there or any diagnosis?
No, and not for me, my mother might have a different opinion certainly, but yeah, she's like that. Well, I guess not, yeah, probably pushing.
My mother might have a different opinion. LOL.
No, we're pushing, not a mental problem. Yeah, sorry.
I mean, he's literally just able to like make jokes and laugh and stuff. It's wild when you think about what's happening in the background.
No, I mean, probably, if I really couldn't think of anything, I mean, she'd never, thought about psychiatry or even discussed it until recently.
Has she ever been violent or anything like that?
No,
Have you guys ever had a physical confrontation?
no, none of that stuff.
It's for us coming in here. It's tough because we obviously want to find out as quickly as possible. We don't know her, and there's many common reasons why people.
Yeah, Abby, I noticed that too, and it's like, but this stuff isn't true. So why? I mean, I get some of it is, but it's all very weird when you start making admissions like they've made.
I'm trying to get the answer to those questions.
Well, please
as
feel
best we can.
Please feel free to ask any questions that you have. Don't worry about moving. I understand that you're here to find out and you're working for her.
Well, all right. I mean, one of the reasons someone goes missing is because they were abused or injured or assaulted. Did you do anything to hurt your wife?
No, sir.
This is a hint that they think it was you. They don't believe you. You're a suspect. This is a hint. Exactly how they're talking to him right now in this interview.
I wouldn't hurt my wife. I mean, I love my wife.
I wouldn't hurt my wife. I love my wife.
The fact is, kind of, Sandy doesn't work without her. I mean, we can't function without her.
You guys never had a physical fight, nothing like that before?
No, not at all.
I mean, there's no mental health, there's no financial problems, there's no extramarital affairs, no physical abuse. The only stress I'm hearing right now is the work.
Being separated.
Separation, depression from a combination of those two.
Yeah. Also, her mother being ill, she had a major neurological event last year, and that's why she had to go to Belgrade. So there's a big pressure from that. My mother had some health problems. So, and then the kids, it all adds up. I mean, I want you to know, up until
Yeah, like he's being Mr. Open, et cetera, et cetera. It's tough. It's really tough. Walsh and Henderson guilty. It's a tough listen for sure. No doubt about it. And we're going to hear more of it tomorrow. That witness is going to come on the stand again to start the day tomorrow, and potentially 6 other witnesses. Mr. Hurd, off topic. Have you watched Jury Duty on Prime Video? It's a mock trial with one juror that doesn't know it's a mock trial, reality TV. I think I saw the first episode. I didn't get to finish it all, but I need to. How long after she's gone is this interview? 3 days, 4 days, and 6 days, I believe. Unbelievable. If you go to lawyeryouknow.com, there's a link there. Or if you go to Twitter or Instagram, we've posted it on there as well. This only reinforces how bad everything was on Karen Reed. Deborah asked, Peter, I noticed a ring on your right hand. That's new. Yeah. It's an Aura ring. Have you guys ever heard about these? It like tracks all your steps and stuff. I don't really know how I feel about it. My wife got it for me. My sister got one and like told me it was great. I don't know. I don't love feeling it. My wedding ring is like so small. It's almost non-existent. It's like so thin. I love that. This is like bigger. It's light, but I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. I'll report back later. Not a sponsorship, just trying it. So I'll see, and I'll let you guys know. All right, let's go watch the Pats game. I appreciate you guys for coming. Please hit that like button if you haven't already, and make sure you subscribe. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you hit that reminder bell. I know there's a lot of people covering this case. If you want to come hang out with me, hit that subscribe button so you get the alerts whenever we are doing a recap. We do daily recaps of trials like this. Not going to stream the trial. Try to answer as many of your questions as possible. Sometimes, depending on, I'm traveling a little bit at the end of this week. I'll be doing live from other places, maybe some pre-recorded ones, but we will be breaking this down, and I'll be getting my dad's take. Criminal defense attorney, federal and state prosecutor, forgot more about criminal law than I'll ever know. We're going to be doing weekly podcasts with him, breaking it down as well. So I appreciate you guys coming to hang out with me tonight. Until next time, I'm out of here. Peace. Thanks for watching another episode of The Lawyer You Know. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the thumbs up and share with your friends who may be interested here on YouTube. And don't forget to subscribe.
You can also follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, and TikTok. And don't forget to check out the Lawyer You Know podcast featuring new episodes every week. And if you have a case that you want to personally talk to us about in your life, if it's a personal injury case, wrongful death, catastrophic injury, car accident, truck accident, or slip and fall case, please email us at lawyeryouknow@gmail.com.
And of course, all these links I just mentioned are included in the description below on this episode and every episode. So until next time, this is Peter Tragos, The Lawyer You Know.